The throne room of Valara Prime was so vast that Jiwan briefly wondered if an entire city could fit inside it. Golden pillars rose hundreds of feet into the air. Crystal chandeliers floated beneath a ceiling, painted with the history of 1,000 worlds. Alien dignitaries from every corner of known space filled the enormous hall. Some floated. Some towered over everyone around them. Some shimmered with living energy. Together, they represented the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. And among them stood one ordinary human soldier, Corporal Jiwan. He stood perfectly still inside his powered combat armor. His rifle rested across his chest. His face remained hidden behind a mirrored visor. He wasn't there as a hero. He wasn't there as a diplomat. He wasn't even there as a representative. He was security. Nothing more. The Galactic Council had finally invited humanity to attend one of its highest ceremonies. Decades of effort. Decades of proving humanity was more than a primitive species from a forgotten corner of space. Today was supposed to symbolize acceptance, respect, equality. At least that was the official story. Admiral Minho stood proudly at the head of the human delegation. Around him gathered ambassadors, scientists, and military officers. Jiwan watched silently, professional, alert, invisible. Exactly as a soldier should be. Then the atmosphere changed. The massive doors opened, and Princess Yuna entered. Announcing. She moved through the hall like someone who had never experienced failure. Never heard the word no. Never doubted her own importance. Her skin shimmered with a faint blue glow. Silver robes flowed behind her. Eyes bright as stars scanned the crowd. Wherever she walked, dignitaries stepped aside. Not because they were asked. Because they knew better. This was Princess Yuna of House Valaris, heir to one of the oldest royal bloodlines in the galaxy. And she knew exactly how important she was. Jiwan's armor sensors automatically tracked every movement. Routine security protocol. Nothing unusual. Then Yuna's eyes landed on him, and stopped. For a second she simply stared. Then she laughed. Loudly. What is that creature wearing? Her amplified voice echoed across the entire throne room. Conversations instantly died. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the human soldier. An elderly Valerian advisor touched her arm gently. Your Highness, that is a human soldier. Their species requires technological assistance for... I know what it is. Yuna interrupted. Then she walked directly toward Jiwan. Like a curious child approaching a strange animal. She circled him slowly, examining every inch of his armor, every weapon, every machine attached to his body. Look at this. She tapped his chest plate with one finger. Clang. The sound echoed through the silent hall. A primitive exoskeleton. Several dignitaries shifted uncomfortably. No one interrupted her. No one dared. We Valerians are born strong. Yuna spread her arms proudly. We survive environments that kill most species. We breathe atmospheres that would burn human lungs. We endure temperatures that would boil human blood. A few nobles nodded approvingly. Yuna smiled, then looked directly at Jiwan. But humans? Her voice dripped with amusement. You need machines. You need armor. You need weapons. Without them? She laughed. You are nothing but soft little creatures. Nervous laughter spread through the room. Some joined in. Others looked away, embarrassed, ashamed, but unwilling to challenge royalty. Admiral Minho stepped forward. His voice remained calm. Your Highness, Corporal Jiwan is serving in an official capacity. Of course he is. Yuna waved dismissively. Humans always enjoy pretending. Pretending to be warriors. Pretending to be equals. Pretending to belong. Her eyes narrowed. But we all know the truth. The room became deathly silent. Humanity sits at this table only because the Council allows it. You are children sitting among adults. No amount of technology will ever change that. Something inside Jiwan became perfectly still. Not angry. Not emotional. Just quiet. The same feeling he experienced before combat. When fear disappeared, when distractions vanished, when only clarity remained. 3 years on the frontier had taught him many things. He had watched friends die. He had survived impossible battles. He carried scars nobody could see. And now this princess, a woman who had likely never missed a meal, never slept in a trench, never watched a battlefield burn, thought she understood strength. For the first time since entering the throne room, Jiwan moved. The entire hall watched. His hands rose slowly toward his helmet. A faint hiss escaped the seals. The locking mechanisms disengaged. "Corporal," Admiral Minho's voice was quiet. "Stand down." But Jiwan continued. The helmet came off first. Then the shoulder plates, the chest armor, the arm guards, the leg sections. One piece at a time. Each component struck the marble floor with a heavy thud. 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 The sound echoed through the throne room like distant thunder. Confusion spread across Yuna's face. "What are you doing?" For the first time, she sounded uncertain. Jiwan didn't answer. He simply continued, until the armor was gone. Now he stood in nothing but a standard gray combat uniform. No enhancements. No protection. No weapons. Just a human being. He looked small compared to most species present. Fragile. Ordinary. Completely unimpressive. Exactly what Yuna expected humans to be. Then Jiwan carefully placed his rifle on top of the armor, turned toward the princess, and bowed, deeply, respectfully. Perfect diplomatic protocol. "Thank you for your observations, Your Highness." His voice was calm, steady, without a trace of anger. "I hope you enjoy the ceremony." That was all. No insults, no threats, no arguments, no attempt to defend himself. Just dignity. Pure, unshakable dignity. Then he turned and walked away. His boots clicked softly against the marble floor. Every eye in the throne room followed him. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the air seemed frozen. The giant doors opened. Jiwan stepped through and disappeared. The doors closed behind him with a soft boom. Princess Yuna remained standing, frozen. Speechless, she had expected outrage, expected shouting, expected the human to prove her right. Instead, he had shown more self-control than anyone else in the room, including her. Beside her, Lady Bora leaned closer. A faint smile touched her lips. "That wasn't the reaction you expected, was it, Your Highness?" For once, Princess Yuna had no answer. Within hours, recordings of the incident spread across the galactic network. Billions watched. Debates exploded across hundreds of worlds. Some called Jiwan a coward. Others called him a hero. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. The human soldier had won that encounter. And he had done it without throwing a single punch. 3 days later, the royal gardens of Valara Prime glowed beneath the evening stars. Strange flowers illuminated the pathways with colors no human language could describe. Princess Yuna sat on a crystalline bench. Lady Bora stood nearby, waiting, watching. Then Jiwan arrived. Not in armor, not carrying weapons, just a simple gray uniform and quiet confidence. "You requested an audience." Yuna folded her arms. Her voice was cold, though she noticeably avoided looking directly into his eyes. Jiwan bowed, the exact same respectful bow. "Your Highness, what do you want?" Jiwan met her gaze. For the first time. Without fear, without resentment, without hostility. "You believe humans are weak. You believe we are inferior. You believe strength comes from the body you are born with." His voice remained calm. "But strength is more than muscle, more than genetics, more than royal blood." Yuna's eyes narrowed. "Then prove it." A faint smile appeared on Jiwan's face. Not arrogant, not challenging, certain. "That is exactly why I came." And for the first time since their first meeting, Princess Yuna felt something she had never associated with humanity before: curiosity. Because deep down, she was beginning to suspect she had judged an entire species without ever truly understanding them. Yuna laughed, but it sounded forced. "And how do you plan to do that?" "Set me a challenge. Any task you choose, I will complete it without my armor, without advanced human technology, without any of the things you called crutches. If I succeed, you will make a public statement, acknowledging that you were wrong about humanity." The garden went very quiet. Lady Bora's eyes widened slightly. Princess Yuna stood up, studying Jion with those two bright eyes. "And if you fail, then you will have proof that you were right. Humanity will accept the shame." Yuna circled him slowly, just like she had in the throne room. But this time, Jijuan was looking right at her, without his armor, without his weapons, just a man standing in a garden. Somehow that made him seem more dangerous, not less. "You're serious?" she said completely. She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "Very well, I accept your challenge, Corporal Jijuan of Earth. I will set 3 trials for you. First, you will survive for 48 hours in the Crimson Wastes, the deadliest desert on our planet. Second, you will face 3 of our warriors in combat trials. Third, you will solve the puzzle of Echo, which has challenged the greatest Valyrian minds for thousands of years." Lady Bora stepped forward. "Your Highness, perhaps." Silence. Yuna kept her eyes on Jiwan. "These are my terms. Do you accept, human?" Ji didn't hesitate. "I accept. The trials will begin in 2 days. They will be broadcast across the Empire. Everyone will watch you fail." Yuna's smile grew wider. "I almost feel sorry for you." "Don't," Jishuan said simply. Then he bowed and left. As soon as he was gone, Lady Bora turned to the princess. "Your Highness, you are underestimating them. The humans have survived on a planet with a gravity well stronger than most worlds. They evolved as endurance hunters. Their minds work differently than ours. This challenge could Could what?" Yuna snapped. "Embarrass me? That human embarrassed me in front of the entire galaxy. I saw the videos. I heard what people are saying. They think I was cruel. They think I was unfair. But I spoke only the truth." Bora bowed her head. "As you say, Your Highness." But later that night, Bora visited the human embassy. She found Admiral Minho in his office reading reports. "Lady Bora," he said, standing. "This is unexpected." "I come with a warning," she said. "The princess is young and proud. She has set tasks designed to be impossible. The Crimson Wastes kill even prepared Valyrian explorers. Our warriors train their entire lives. The puzzle has never been solved by an outsider. Are you asking us to withdraw?" "No." Bora's expression was hard to read. "I am telling you that if your soldier somehow succeeds, it will change everything. Not just for him, for all of humanity. The galaxy is watching." Minho nodded slowly. "Jijuan knows what he's doing." "Does he? Or is he just angry?" "Both, probably." Minho allowed himself a small smile. "But we humans have a saying. Lady Bora, we are at our best when we are underestimated." Back in his quarters, Jivuan was preparing. Du-Hoon watched him sort through basic survival gear with growing anxiety. "This is crazy," Du-Hoon said. "The Crimson Wastes alone could kill you. Add in the combat trials, the puzzle. Jivuan, you're one person. You can't prove the worth of our entire species by yourself." Jiwan looked up at his friend. "I'm not trying to prove the worth of humanity. I'm trying to show one princess that strength comes in many forms. That intelligence and adaptability matter just as much as physical power. That we humans might be small and soft, but we're still here, still standing, still surviving. And if you die doing it," Jiwan smiled. And it was the first real smile Dohi had seen from him in days. "Then, at least I died, trying to change someone's mind instead of just accepting their hatred." 2 days later, the trials began. The Crimson Wastes earned their name, honestly. Red sand stretched to the horizon in every direction, baking under twin suns that turned the air into waves of heat. The temperature during the day reached levels that could kill most species within hours. At night, it dropped so fast that unprepared travelers froze where they stood. Jiwan stood at the drop point, wearing only light clothing, basic boots, and carrying a small pack with water rations and simple tools. No human technology, no GPS, no climate-controlled suit, just him and the desert. The transport shuttle lifted off, leaving him alone. Overhead, monitoring drones circled like metal birds. Billions were watching across the empire. In the royal palace, Princess Yuna sat in a viewing room with her advisors, watching multiple camera feeds. "How long do you think he will last?" she asked. Ranger Hijin, the Valyrian wilderness expert monitoring the trial, checked her instruments. "In this heat, without proper protection, 4 hours, maybe 6 if he is lucky. The human body is not designed for these extremes." Yuna nodded, feeling a strange knot in her stomach. She told herself it was satisfaction. Junon started walking, but he didn't head for shelter like Hajun expected. Instead, he began studying the landscape with careful attention. He knelt down and touched the sand, letting it run through his fingers. He looked at the few plants that somehow survived here, examining their leaves and stems. "What is he doing?" Yuna asked. "I don't know," Jin admitted. "He should be finding shade immediately." After an hour of exploration, Jiswan found what he was looking for: a small depression in the ground, where several dead plants gathered. He began digging carefully, going deeper and deeper. The watching scientists were confused, until water began to seep into the hole. "He found a moisture pocket," Hijun said with surprise. But how did he know where to look? Dr. Taiyang, a human xenobiologist watching from the base camp, smiled. He read the plants. Their root systems pointed him to underground water. It's basic desert survival on Earth, but the principle works on any world. Jijuan created a solar still, using his water container and some clear material from his pack. It was simple technology, nothing that violated the rules. The device would collect condensation and give him drinking water. He worked efficiently, wasting no movement in the brutal heat. As the day wore on, the temperature climbed higher. Jayunan covered himself with sand during the worst hours, staying still, breathing slowly. He looked like he was suffering, but he was managing. His body had evolved on a planet with deserts of its own. Humans knew heat. "He's still alive," Yuna said quietly as evening approached. "The real test comes tonight," Hijin replied. "The cold will be worse than the heat." She was right. As the sun set, the temperature dropped like a stone. Frost began forming on the red sand. Most species would die from the shock of the change. Jiwan had dug himself into a shallow trench and covered it with sand, creating insulation. He shivered violently, but his body's internal temperature regulation kept him alive. On day 2, the sandstorm came. The warnings appeared on all the monitoring equipment. A massive storm, the kind that killed even experienced explorers. The viewing room erupted in urgent conversation. "We must extract him," Lady Bora said firmly. "Your Highness, this storm will strip flesh from bone." Yuna stared at the screens, watching the wall of red death approaching Juan's position. For the first time, she felt real fear, not for herself, but for him. "He accepted the challenge knowing the risks," she said, but her voice shook slightly. Jijuan saw the storm coming. He had maybe 10 minutes. Instead of panicking, he moved with purpose. He found the largest dune and began digging into its side, creating a cave. He worked faster than seemed possible for someone who had been in the desert for over a day without real shelter. "Human adrenaline response," Dr. Taiyang explained to the Valyrian observers. "In crisis, our bodies can push beyond normal limits for short periods." Jushan got deep enough, just as the storm hit. He sealed the entrance with his pack and curled into a ball. The storm raged for 6 hours. The drones lost visual. Everyone thought he was dead. When the storm finally passed and the drones found his position again, they saw sand shifting. A hand emerged. Then another Jiwan pulled himself out of the collapsed dune, coughing and covered in red dust. But alive, Yuna stood up from her seat without realizing it. "Impossible," she whispered. But Jiwan wasn't done. On the second day, he encountered the razor-spine predators. 6 of them, each the size of a large dog with crystalline spikes covering their bodies. They hunted in packs and could take down prey 10 times their size. Instead of running or fighting, Jiwan did something strange. He followed them. At a distance, never threatening, just tracking. The predators noticed him, but seemed confused by his behavior. Hour after hour, he kept pace with them, never getting too close, never falling behind. "What is he doing?" Yuna asked again. "Persistence hunting," Dr. Taeyang said, with something like pride. "Ancient human technique. We are not the fastest or strongest species, but we can outlast almost anything." He's tracking them back to their den, learning their patterns. He's showing them he's not prey, but not a threat either. After 8 hours of tracking, Jishuan had mapped their territory completely. He had learned where they drank, where they hunted, where they rested. He used this knowledge to avoid them completely for the rest of the trial. When the 48 hours ended, Jiwan walked to the extraction point ahead of schedule. He was exhausted, sunburned, and looked like he had aged 5 years, but he was alive. More than that, he had mapped several water sources and safe routes through a region that Valyrians considered uninhabitable. The shuttle landed. Jiwan climbed aboard without ceremony. As it lifted off, he looked out the window at the crimson wastes one last time and allowed himself a small smile. In the viewing room, Princess Yuna stood very still. Her advisors were talking excitedly about what they had witnessed, but she barely heard them. She had been so certain he would fail, so certain that humans were weak. He just got lucky with the weather, she said. Finally, Lady Bora looked at her princess with something like disappointment. Your Highness, he made his own luck. He used knowledge, patience, and adaptability. Perhaps those are strengths you did not consider. Yuna said nothing. But that night, she reviewed the footage of the trial over and over, watching this human do the impossible, and the knot in her stomach grew tighter. The royal arena had stood for 3,000 years. Its walls had witnessed countless battles, tests of honor, and displays of Valyrian might. Now it would host something entirely different. A human, small and soft by galactic standards, would face 3 of their finest warriors. Thousands filled the stands. Millions more watched across the empire. Jishuan walked onto the sand floor, wearing simple training clothes. He had been given 1 day to rest after the desert trial. It was not nearly enough, but he had not complained. Princess Yuna sat in the royal box, surrounded by nobles and officials. She looked calm, but her hands gripped the armrests tightly. Lady Bora noticed, but said nothing. The rules were explained by the arena master. 3 fights, one after another, non-lethal combat only. Jiwan would use standard Valyrian training weapons. No rest between matches. If he won all 3, the trial was passed. Champion Salmon entered first. She moved like water, graceful and deadly. She was a duelist, trained from childhood in the precise art of Valyrian combat. She bowed to Jiwan, her expression neutral but confident. You survived the wastes, she said. That was impressive. But this is different. This is what I was born to do. Ju Fian bowed back. I look forward to learning from you. Well, the fight began. Salmon was faster than Ju Fian expected. Her first strike came like lightning, and he barely blocked it. The second strike hit his shoulder. The third, his ribs. Within 30 seconds, he was bleeding from a cut on his cheek. The crowd roared approval. This was what they had expected. The human was outmatched, but Jiwan was not trying to win yet. He was studying. Every culture developed different fighting styles based on their body structure and history. Valyrians stood tall and fought in elegant, upright positions. Their strikes were precise and powerful. Beautiful. Really, Jiwan took more hits, but he was learning the rhythm. Then he did something Salmon had never seen. He dropped low below her center line and swept her legs. Valyrians did not fight from the ground. She fell hard, surprised. Before she could recover, Jiwan was on her, using grappling techniques, wrestling, joint locks, positions that Earth fighters had developed over thousands of years. Alman was skilled, but she had no training for this. Within 2 minutes, Jiwan had her in a submission hold. Yeah, he said quietly. Sun struggled for a moment, then tapped the sand twice. The arena went silent. Jijuan helped her up. She looked at him with new respect. What was that technique? We on Earth, we call it jujitsu, the gentle art using leverage instead of strength. Fascinating, Salmon said. She bowed deeply. You have taught me something today. Princess Yuna leaned forward in her seat. Her mind was racing. The human had won, but not through superior strength. Through different thinking, the second opponent entered. Warlord Junho was massive, even by Valyrian standards. He had natural armor plating on his arms and chest. His record was 300 victories, 0 defeats. He looked at Jijuan like a man looks at an insect. I will try not to hurt you too badly, little human, Junho said. I appreciate that, Junho replied. When the fight started, Junho came forward like a landslide. His first punch would have shattered bones if it had connected. Ji-won moved aside. The second punch missed. The third Junho was strong and skilled, but he was also heavy. Ji-won was lighter, faster in short bursts. But this could not last. Junho was also experienced. He began cutting off the arena, limiting Ji-won's space to move. Sooner or later he would land a hit, and one hit might be all it took, so Ji-won stopped trying to avoid the fight. Instead, he made Junho chase him in patterns, left, right, forward, back, never letting the big warrior rest, never giving him a moment to catch his breath. Minutes passed, then 10 minutes, then 20. The crowd grew quieter. They were watching something strange. Junho was slowing down. His breathing was becoming labored. The human was still moving, still dodging, still making him work. Impossible, someone in the crowd whispered. Junho has unlimited stamina. But that was not quite true. Valyrians were strong, but their cardiovascular systems were designed for short bursts of power. Humans were different. Humans had evolved to run down prey over hours, even days. Their hearts and lungs were incredibly efficient. After 30 minutes, Junho was exhausted. He could barely lift his arms. Ji-won, though tired, was still functional. He moved in carefully and used leverage to bring the giant warrior to the ground. It took time, but eventually, Junho could not continue. I yield. Zunihyu gasped. You did not beat me with strength. No, Ji-won agreed, helping him sit. I beat you. With time, Princess Yuna was standing now, her hands gripping the railing of the royal box. Around her, the nobles were silent. This was not supposed to happen. The human was supposed to lose. The third warrior entered. Master Unji was old, perhaps 500 years by Valyrian counting. She was small for her species, frail-looking, but her eyes were sharp as broken glass. 2 victories, she said to Jan. But youth and cleverness will not help you now. I have fought for centuries. I know every technique, every trick. Jishuan bowed to her, deeper than he had to the others. Then I am honored to face you, Master. The fight that followed was different from the first 2. It was slower, more careful. Unji adapted to Jiwan's ground fighting style. Within minutes, she countered his speed by reading his intentions. When he tried the same exhaustion tactics, she paced herself perfectly. They fought for an hour. Both landed hits. Both avoided devastating strikes. It became less like combat and more like conversation. Each movement was a question, each response an answer. Jiwan realized something. Unji was not trying to simply defeat him. She was testing him, testing his spirit, his understanding, his character. He changed his approach. Instead of trying to win, he tried to learn. He began copying her techniques, adapting them to his human body. When she struck, he asked with his movements, "Why that angle?" When she blocked, he responded, "I understand." The crowd watched in confusion. The fight looked almost cooperative now. Finally, after an hour of this strange dance, Unji stepped back and lowered her weapon. "I yield," she said. Gasps filled the arena. Master Yunji had never yielded to anyone. "You have passed my test, Jiwan of Earth. You fight not just with body, but with mind and heart. You came here not to prove you were stronger, but to understand strength itself." She bowed to him, a gesture of respect between equals. "Your species carries the weight of a harsh world in your bones. That weight has made you resilient, in ways we are only beginning to understand." Jiwan could barely stand. He was covered in bruises, bleeding from a dozen small cuts, but he returned her bow. The arena erupted in noise. Some cheered, some argued. Everyone had an opinion. In the royal box, Princess Yuna sat down slowly. She felt strange, like the ground was shifting under her. Everything she had believed about humans, about strength, about superiority, was crumbling. Lady Bora leaned close. "Your Highness, there is still the third trial, the puzzle of echoes." Yuna nodded slowly. "Yes, the puzzle. Surely he cannot solve that." But her voice sounded hollow, even to herself. The Hall of Echoes sat at the heart of the oldest part of the palace. Its walls were carved from a single piece of crystal that seemed to shift colors in the light. At the center stood the Puzzle of Echoes, an ancient device built by the first Valyrian philosophers. It was part machine, part art, part test of character. Thousands had attempted to solve it over the millennia. Only a handful had succeeded. All of them. Valyrian scholars who had devoted decades to understanding their own culture and history. The puzzle required not just intelligence but deep knowledge of Valyrian philosophy, ethics, and thought. Jijuan stood before it, looking small and tired. He had been given 2 days to recover from the combat trials. His bruises had faded to yellow and green. He could move without wincing now, barely. Sage Dongyan, the keeper of the hall, explained the challenge. The puzzle is a simulation of historical Valyrian conflicts and ethical dilemmas. You must navigate them, making choices that show understanding of our values and principles. Most challengers take weeks. Many never solve it. You have 72 hours. What happens if I make wrong choices? Jiwan asked. The puzzle resets. You begin again. There is no penalty except lost time. Ji Yuan nodded. May I ask questions about Valyrian culture while I work? Dong Huan raised an eyebrow. That is unusual but not forbidden. I will answer what I can. 3. Princess Yuna watched from an observation room connected to the hall. She had not slept well since the combat trials. She kept seeing the human move in ways she had never imagined, using weakness as strength, turning disadvantages into advantages. Jiwan began the puzzle. The first scenario appeared in the crystal. Holographic figures acting out an ancient dispute between two Valyrian houses. He had to choose how to resolve it. He made a choice based on logic. The puzzle reset. He tried again. After 4 hours of failures, Jijuan stopped. He sat down on the floor and closed his eyes. The observers thought he was giving up, but he was thinking. When he opened his eyes, he called out to Sage Dongyun. Can you tell me about the philosophy of balance that I keep seeing referenced? Dong Hun seemed pleased by the question. The balance is central to Valyrian thought. It teaches that all things must exist in harmony. Strength balanced with wisdom, passion balanced with reason, individual needs balanced with collective good. Jiwan asked more questions about history, about values, about the cultural context of conflicts. He was not trying to solve the puzzle yet. He was learning about the people who built it. Hours passed. Princess Yuna found herself listening to Jiwan's questions. They were good questions, thoughtful. He did not ask about answers, but about understanding. On the second day, Jiwan tried the puzzle again. This time, he got further before resetting. But he was making progress. He was learning to think like a Valyrian, to see problems through their cultural lens. But something was still missing. After 40 hours of work, Jisuan did something unexpected. He requested an audience with Princess Yuna. She almost refused, but curiosity won. She came to the hall herself, stepping into the crystal chamber. It was the first time they had been alone together since the challenge began. Why did you want to see me? She asked, her voice carefully controlled. Jijuan looked tired. His eyes were shadowed from lack of sleep. I need to understand something. The puzzle keeps presenting scenarios about duty versus desire, tradition versus change. I can see the logical Valiant answers, but I'm missing something deeper. Something about how you actually feel about these conflicts. This is cheating, Yuna said, but without much conviction. Sage Dong Yun approved my questions. I'm trying to understand, Your Highness. Not just solve. There's a difference. Yuna sat down on one of the stone benches. What do you want to know? Tell me about being a princess, about the expectations placed on you. For a moment, Yuna said nothing. Then surprisingly, she began to talk. She spoke about growing up in the palace, always watched, always judged, about the pressure to be perfect, to represent Valyrian superiority, about how lonely it was to be born into a role she never chose. Jisuan listened without interrupting. He asked gentle questions, about her childhood, about her fears, about the person. She was beyond the crown. Why do you care? Yuna asked finally. I humiliated you. I called your entire species weak, because you're part of the puzzle, Jisuan said simply. You're young, powerful, trapped between who you're supposed to be and who you are. That's in every scenario the puzzle presents. The tension between duty and authenticity. Yuna stared at him. No one had ever asked her these things. No one had ever seemed to see her as anything other than the princess. I was wrong about you, she said quietly. About humans? I judged you based on appearance, on preconceptions. I was cruel, because I felt threatened. Threatened by what you represent. Change, new ideas, the possibility that the old ways of thinking about strength and worth might be incomplete. She looked down at her hands. It's terrifying, actually. They talked for 2 hours about fear, about growth, about the pressure of living up to expectations. When Jiwan finally returned to the puzzle, something had shifted in his understanding. He approached the scenarios differently now, not just with Valyrian logic, but with empathy. He began to see that the puzzle was not really about making the right choices. It was about understanding why the choices mattered to the people involved. The hours ticked down. 48 hours, 60, 70. With 2 hours remaining, Jiwan entered the final scenario. It was the hardest one, a complex situation, with no clear right answer. He stood before the crystal display for a long time, thinking. Then he made his choice. Not the logical one, not even the traditional Valyrian one, but the one that showed he understood the heart of what the puzzle was teaching. The crystal flared with light. Ancient mechanisms hummed to life. Slowly, a message appeared in the air, written in old Valyrian script. Sage Donghyun read it aloud, his voice filled with wonder. True strength lies in understanding others. The puzzle had been solved. Observers across the empire who had been watching erupted in discussion. The Valyrian scholars were stunned. A human, an outsider, had solved a puzzle that even many Valyrians failed. Princess Yuna stood in the observation room, tears running down her face without her permission. She had watched every minute of the trial. She had seen Jiwan struggle, think, question, and grow. And she had realized something terrible and wonderful. She had been completely wrong. Jiwan emerged from the hall looking like he might collapse at any moment. Dune was there to catch him, along with Admiral Minho. "You did it," Dune said, grinning. "You crazy bastard. You actually did it. All 3 trials." Admiral Minho said quietly. "The galaxy is watching, Jiwan. You have shown them what humanity can be." But Ji was looking past them to where Princess Yuna stood in the doorway. She walked toward him slowly, her face showing more emotion than anyone had ever seen from the composed princess. "You have passed all 3 trials," she said formally. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "I owe you a public apology." "Yes," Jiwan said, "you do." There was no triumph in his voice, just tired honesty. "I will give it," Yuna promised, "tomorrow before the council. But I want you to know something first." She took a breath. "I am sorry. Not because I lost a challenge, but because I was wrong. About you. About humans. About what makes someone truly strong." Junshan nodded. "Thank you, Your Highness. Call me Yuna," she said. "I think we are past formality now." The formal apology was scheduled for the next day. But as Jiwan was taken away to rest, and Yuna returned to her chambers, both of them knew that something had changed between them. A princess had learned humility. A soldier had proven dignity, and the galaxy had witnessed both. The throne room looked exactly as it had weeks ago when this had all started. The same golden pillars, the same alien dignitaries filling the space, the same sense of importance hanging in the air. But everything was different now. Jiwan stood in his dress uniform, not armor this time. Admiral Minho was beside him. Along with the rest of the human delegation across the galaxy, billions watched. This moment would define how humanity was seen for generations. Princess Yuna entered wearing formal royal robes, her face composed and regal. She walked to the central platform, where rulers made official declarations. Lady Bora and the other advisors followed her. The emperor himself, her father, sat on his throne, watching with an expression that revealed nothing. The crowd fell silent. Yuna began with the formal words required by law and tradition. "I, Princess Yuna of House Valaris, heir to the Valyrian throne, do hereby acknowledge that Corporal Han Jiwan of Earth has successfully completed all 3 trials set before him. The terms of our agreement are fulfilled." She paused. This was where she was supposed to give a brief apology and be done. Simple, clean, official. Instead, she looked directly at Jiwan. "But those words are not enough," she said. Her voice carried through the hall, amplified by her natural abilities. "What I said to you, Corporal Jiwan, what I said about your species was wrong. Not just factually wrong, but morally wrong. I judged humanity based on appearance and preconception. I called you weak because you used tools and technology. I mocked you because you looked different from us." The crowd stirred. This was not a standard apology. "I was wrong about strength," Yuna continued. Her hands gripped the podium. "I thought strength was only about physical power, about what body you are born with. I thought that because Valyrians are naturally resilient, we are superior. But Corporal Giwan showed me something different. She gestured to the displays showing footage from the trials. He survived our deadliest desert, not through physical superiority, but through knowledge and adaptability. He defeated our warriors not through greater strength, but through different thinking and incredible endurance. He solved our most challenging puzzle, not through Valyrian knowledge, but through empathy and understanding. Yuna's voice grew stronger. These are strengths I did not recognize. These are strengths my people have not valued enough, and I was blind to them because I was afraid. No. Now the crowd was completely silent. Even the Emperor leaned forward slightly. I am 19 years old. I will one day rule an empire. I have been trained, my entire life, to be confident, to be strong, to represent Valyrian superiority. But that training also made me arrogant. It made me cruel. Her voice cracked slightly. When I saw the humans with their armor and their tools and their determination, they reminded me of my own fears. My fear that I am not enough. My fear that without the advantages of my birth, I would be ordinary. Tears were running down her face now. The perfect princess crying in front of the entire galaxy. I mocked Corporal Giwan, because seeing him and his people succeed despite their disadvantages made me confront my own insecurity. How much of my strength is really mine? How much is just the accident of being born Valyrian, born royal? Would I survive the trials I set for him? The throne room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. The answer is no. I would not. I am strong in some ways but weak in others. And that is okay. True strength is not about being superior to others. It is about understanding yourself and growing beyond your limitations. Yuna turned to Giwan fully. You walked away from me once when I insulted you. You could have argued or shouted or tried to prove yourself through anger. Instead, you showed dignity. You showed that words alone never change minds. Only actions reveal truth. And your actions over these past weeks have revealed a truth I needed to learn. She stepped down from the platform and walked to where Giwan stood. Then, to everyone's shock, she bowed to him. Deep and formal, the way royalty bows only to equals. I am sorry, Corporal Hanjiwan. I am sorry to humanity. You are not weak. You are not inferior. You are different from us. And that difference is valuable. The galaxy is better because humans are part of it. Jishuan looked at her for a long moment. Then he bowed back, equally deep. I accept your apology, Princess Yuna, and I thank you for your honesty. It takes great strength to admit when you are wrong. The throne room erupted in sound. Some applauded, some argued. The human delegation looked proud. Admiral Minho had actual tears in his eyes. The Emperor stood, silencing the crowd with a gesture. My daughter has spoken wisely today. She has shown me that she may indeed be ready to lead our empire one day, not because she is perfect, but because she can learn and grow. He looked at the assembled dignitaries. Understanding serves everyone. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Diplomats mingled, alliances were discussed, and the future seemed brighter than it had in years. But Giwan found himself tired of crowds. He slipped out to one of the palace gardens. Yuna found him there 20 minutes later. She had changed out of her formal robes into something simpler. May I join you? She asked. Of course. They sat on a bench beneath trees that glowed softly in the evening light. For a while, neither spoke. That was a good speech, Jiswan said finally. It was the truth. I owed you that. You gave more than you needed to. You shared things that were personal. Yuna smiled sadly. I learned from watching you that honesty matters. You never hid who you were, even when it would have been easier to pretend. They talked for hours about Earth and Val Ara, about the pressure of leadership, and the freedom of being ordinary, about family and friends, and dreams that had nothing to do with their official roles. What will you do now? Yuna asked. Return to my unit. Continue serving. I am still just a corporal. Whatever else happened here, you could ask for a promotion, a better position. What you did will make you famous. Jijuan shook his head. I did not do this for fame or advancement. I did it because someone needed to show you that humans are worthy of respect. Mission accomplished, Yuna said softly. Is it? 3 trials changed your mind. But there are billions of beings who still think the way you used to think. Change takes time. Then we will give it time. I will spend my life working to make the galaxy more understanding, more accepting. I promise you that. Jiwan believed her. He could see it in her eyes. The princess who had mocked him was gone. In her place was someone wiser, someone humbled, someone who had learned to see beyond the surface. "Will I see you again?" Yuna asked. "Maybe. The galaxy is large, but humans and Valerians will work together now. Our paths might cross, might run, maybe. I hope they do." They parted as friends, which neither would have believed possible. Weeks ago, as Jiwon walked back to the embassy, he thought about how strange life could be. He had come to Valara Prime as a guard. He was leaving as something else. Not a hero exactly, but a bridge between worlds. Behind him, Princess Yuna watched him go. She thought about the human who had walked away when she mocked him, who had faced impossible trials with quiet determination, who had taught her more about strength than a lifetime of training ever could. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had proven themselves, and one princess had learned that strength comes in many forms. But as the days passed and life returned to normal, neither of them knew that forces were moving in the darkness. Forces that did not want humanity to succeed. Forces that saw the changing galaxy as a threat to their power. The trials were over, but the real test was about to begin. 3 months passed. Jiwon returned to his unit and tried to resume normal life. But normal was impossible now. Everywhere he went, people recognized him. Other soldiers asked for advice. Officers treated him differently. The human who had defeated the Valerian trials had become a symbol of something larger than himself. He stayed in contact with Yuna through secure channels. She sent him messages about her work in the council, about the changes she was trying to implement. He sent her observations about how humans and other species were interacting more openly. Their friendship, impossible as it seemed, was real. On Era Prime, Princess Yuna threw herself into advocacy work. She spoke publicly about diversity, about recognizing different forms of strength, about building bridges between species. Many loved her for it. Her approval ratings among younger Valerians were higher than ever. But not everyone was happy. In the shadows of power, conservative forces were gathering. Duke Sunung Ho, a senior noble with deep ties to the military, met with others who shared his views in private chambers far from the palace. "The princess has lost her mind," Sun Ho said, his voice dripping with disgust, apologizing to humans, praising their weakness as strength. "She is destroying everything our civilization stands for." Commander Isul, leader of a powerful military faction, nodded agreement. "The old emperor is weak. He allows this, but there are those of us who remember when Ara was strong, when we did not bow to inferior species. What do you propose?" Another noble asked quietly. Sunu Ho smiled coldly. "We remind the galaxy why Valarians are superior. We show them what happens when humans are given too much respect." 2. We on a distant colony world. An explosion tore through a mining facility. Hundreds died instantly, both Valerian and human workers. The facility was destroyed completely. Emergency responders found fragments of technology in the wreckage. Human technology. Within hours, the news spread across the empire. Evidence suggested that human saboteurs had attacked the facility. Analysis of the explosive residue matched human military compounds. Witness reports mentioned seeing humans near the facility before the blast. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Anti-human protests erupted on dozens of worlds. The videos of Jiwon's trials were reframed as proof of human trickery and deception. Social networks exploded with hatred. Everything Yuna had worked for began to crumble. "Humans are murderers." The protesters chanted, "Remove them from the council. Send them back to their primitive world." At the human embassy on Valara Prime, Ambassador Nari faced an emergency session with her staff. "This makes no sense. Why would we attack a facility where our own people worked? It's suicide politically." "It doesn't have to make sense," Admiral Minho said grimly. "It just has to seem believable. And right now, people want to believe it." Jichuan watched the news feeds with growing horror. He knew immediately this was wrong. Humans had too much to lose, but proving it would be nearly impossible. Princess Yuna was summoned to an emergency council meeting. The chamber was filled with angry voices demanding action against humanity. Du Kung Ho stood before the assembly. "Your Highness, you championed these humans. You told us they were honorable. Now hundreds are dead because you were naive. What do you say to that?" Yuna felt the weight of every eye on her. The easy thing would be to back down, to distance herself from humanity, to survive politically. But she thought about Jiwon walking away from her mockery with quiet dignity. She thought about the trials. She thought about truth. I say that we should investigate thoroughly before making accusations, she said clearly. This evidence is convenient, perhaps too convenient. Are you suggesting this was not a human attack? Another council member demanded. I am suggesting we find the truth rather than accepting the easiest answer. The pressure was enormous. Conservative nobles called for her to be removed from her position as heir. Military leaders demanded human expulsion. Even some of her allies suggested she should compromise to save her political future, but Yuna refused. I will not betray what I know to be right because it is difficult. Investigate the attack. Find real evidence, but I will not condemn an entire species without proof. Meanwhile, Jiwon had made his own decision. He requested emergency leave and with Do-hoon's help, began his own investigation. They reviewed footage from the colony. They analyzed the technical reports, and slowly, they found inconsistencies. The explosive compound matched human military design, but the detonation pattern was wrong. The timing devices used technology that humans did not have access to. The witness reports were vague and contradictory. This was a frame job, Dune said. Someone wanted to make it look like our attack. But who and why? The answer came from an unexpected source. Lady Bora contacted Jijwon through encrypted channels. She had been investigating on her own, using her position in the palace to access restricted files. Du Kung Ho and Commander Isu, she told him. They have been planning this for months. I found records of meetings, resource transfers, connections to the colony facility. They staged the attack to turn the Empire against humanity. Can you prove it? Not alone. But if you can get me physical evidence from the attack site, I can connect it to their conspiracy. Jigjuan knew what he had to do. It was dangerous, probably illegal, and could end his career. But justice mattered more. He and Dune, along with a small team of trusted human investigators, traveled to the colony in secret. They searched the ruins, avoiding official security, looking for anything that could prove the truth. In the remains of the facility's control room, Jiwon found it, a piece of the detonation device that had survived the blast. On it were serial numbers traced back to a Valyrian military installation controlled by Isul's faction. They smuggled the evidence back to Atara Prime. Lady Bora took it to the Emperor himself, bypassing the council entirely. The Emperor ordered an immediate investigation. Within days, the truth came out. Sun Ho and Isul had indeed orchestrated the attack. They had used a mix of human and Valyrian technology to frame humanity. They had killed their own people to create fear and hatred. The revelation shocked the Empire. An emergency council session was called. This time, Duke Sangho and Commander Issa stood as the accused. The evidence was overwhelming. They had betrayed their own species, murdered hundreds, and attempted to start an interspecies conflict. Princess Yuna stood before the council, and her voice was iron. These individuals represent the worst of what we can be. They were willing to kill, to lie, to destroy innocent lives. All because they feared change. All because they could not accept that the galaxy is becoming more inclusive, more understanding. The Emperor himself passed judgment. Sun Ho was stripped of his title and lands. Isul was removed from military command. Both would face trial for murder and treason, but the damage had been done. Trust between humans and Valerians had been badly wounded. The protests had shown how quickly hatred could spread. Humanity's position on the council was debated again. This time, though, something different happened. Princess Yuna gave a speech defending human membership, and she was joined by unexpected allies. Master Yunji, the ancient warrior Jiwon had faced in the trials, spoke about human honor. Ranger Jun described human adaptability. Even Warlord Junho admitted that humans had proven their worth. The vote to keep humanity in the council passed barely, but it passed. Ambassador Nari thanked Yuna personally. You risked everything to stand by us. No, Yuna said. I risked everything to stand by the truth. There is a difference. After the crisis ended, Jiwon was awarded the Star of Valara, the highest civilian honor the Empire could give. He was the first human to receive it. The ceremony was smaller than the trials had been, more intimate. Afterward, Yuna found him in the same garden where they had talked months before. You walked away once and changed everything, she said, sitting beside him. You changed me. You changed the Empire. You changed how we see the galaxy. I just survived some trials, Jiwon said with a slight smile. No, you did more than that. You showed us that different can mean better, not worse. That strength comes in forms we had not imagined. that judging others based on appearance or prejudice only makes us weaker. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the glowing trees sway in the alien breeze. "What now?" Jiwan asked eventually. "Now we keep moving forward. The galaxy is changing slowly but surely. There will be more challenges, more people who resist, but we have proven that change is possible." Yuna looked at him. "You taught me something important, Jiwan. When faced with hatred, sometimes the strongest response is to simply walk away with dignity, and then prove your worth through actions. And what did you teach me?" Yuna thought about it. That even people who seem completely wrong, who seem cruel and arrogant, can learn and grow if given the chance. That redemption is possible. Jushin nodded. "Then maybe we both learned that people are more than their worst moments." Maybe we did. Jiwan returned to Earth the next week. He had been gone for months, had become famous across the galaxy, had helped prevent an inter-Ecosis war. But when he arrived home, he went back to his small apartment, back to his normal life, back to being just another soldier. Except he was not just another soldier anymore. None of humanity was. Earth had proven itself, not through conquest or domination, but through resilience, adaptability, intelligence, and moral courage. The galaxy had tried to keep humans in their place, had underestimated them, had mocked them, and humanity had simply kept moving forward. On our prime, Princess Yuna continued her work. She knew it would take generations to truly change the Empire's culture. But she had learned patience from watching a human survive impossible trials. She kept Jiwan's first message to her displayed in her private chambers. It was simple. "Thank you for learning. Never stop growing." Quote, "The arrogant princess who had mocked a human soldier was gone forever. In her place was a leader who understood that true strength meant understanding others, accepting growth, and having the courage to admit when you were wrong." And somewhere between Earth and Valara Prime, in the vast darkness of space, the galaxy continued turning, changed slightly, made better by a soldier who had walked away with dignity, and a princess who had learned humility. The story was over, but the friendship, the understanding, the slow progress toward a better galaxy continued. Because that is what humans do. They endure, they adapt, they never stop walking forward. Humanity, yeah.